and welcome to Racing Incident, a Formula One and other motorsport podcast with an American accent. I'm Anna, and this is our big relaunch of Racing Incident. So we hope that you're excited that we're back. We were gone, now we're back. The girls who get it, get it. And we're super excited to be back. We hope you guys are excited too. You will remember that previously it was myself and Ellen, however you wanted to refer to her, who was always on the show with me, and then sometimes we'd have guests. But now that we have relaunched, some things are changing, and hopefully, if you're watching this potentially on YouTube, you'll be seeing a beautiful new face alongside mine. And this is allow me to introduce him. This is Flip. Flip is our brand new producer, jack of all trades, editor, doing all kinds of stuff. Going to be helping us to hopefully sustain doing the show this time for a long, long time, and not just for as long as as long as I was able to have my mental health allow me to. So Flip, I wanted to first of all, to introduce you obviously to the Racing Incident family and listeners, and like tell us a little about yourself. Tell us the origin story of how it is that you came to be part of Racing Incident.
Okay, so it really starts with my wife, who has a competing F1 podcast that I shall
Shh.
not name. I will not name it. I will not name. I will give them no credit. Actually,
Excellent.
I will give them credit on Twitter because periodically I interact with everybody, but I can't give them any credit because I gotta grow this thing, right?
Exactly.
Um, so here's the scoop. We meet. She and I meet. She's a Formula One fan. I am not. So right there, you got the immediate dynamic of she's the real sports fan, and I'm just there because she does it, right? But then I got hooked on Formula One, and I started consuming lots and lots of F1 content. It got to the point we were watching pre-race, post-race. I was sitting there becoming a huge fan of Ted Kravitz. Like, yeah, you walk that paddock, Ted. You walk it. So I think what happened was like at a certain point, I started realizing I was listening to a bunch of different podcasts, and I was giving her feedback on her podcast. Like, you know what you guys should do? You should do this and this, and you know what? You should get some guests. And actually, what's funny was I was actually scouting other podcasts because I was like, well, how those other podcasts get like in such notoriety? How come they're getting like cool guests? And what really triggered it, and the reason the way I found out about Racing Incident was I think it was Lance King and Elizabeth Blackstock did their like top 20 list. And
Yeah.
I think Racing
Yeah.
Incident was one of them. Quick Stop F1 was another one. Can I
hmm
name them? They're
We
cool.
can. I think Quick Stop is always okay to shout out because
Okay.
they're fellow indie creators like us. Obviously, they're a bigger deal than us, but hey, maybe not forever. We'll see.
They would
Uh,
make excellent guests on our show
for
if they,
sure,
you
we'll
know.
absolutely do that at some point. Absolutely, yeah. We
So,
love Quick Stop, and we like to think the love is mutual. We'll find out, I guess, when we ask them if they want to be on the show. But yeah, go on.
So anyway, I found out about these other podcasts and I started listening. And Racing Incident was fun because, again, I'm married to a woman who does a Formula One podcast. So listening to women do a Formula One podcast was kind of interesting and kind of fun. And it's just so intriguing to see like your perspectives because there definitely is, and still, I think there is, was, and forever will be a schism between quote unquote old school fans and new school fans. And the reasons
Yes.
people have fallen in love with the sport, I think, varies based on when they get their introduction. And
Mhm.
long story short, I found myself going like, it's kind of cool to kind of survey the different types of fandom because I am, I've been a fan long enough that gosh, this is confession time. My wife is an Alonso fan. Okay.
Yeah,
And
let's get
I,
that out of the way.
okay, so I started out as hey, Alonso's at Ferrari. I'll root for Alonso. We went to Abu Dhabi, not in 2021. We went to Abu
Right.
Dhabi in, I think it was 2013, 2014.
Wow.
2013, 2013. And
In
we
the olden days.
yes, back when Sebastian Vettel was dominating the field and wins races by like 25 seconds, which
Oh yeah.
seeing a Red Bull
Yeah.
do that now is anyway. We go to Abu Dhabi and I have my Ferrari hat on, and Ferrari World's like right back there behind like the hotel, and I'm just like, wow, Formula One, it's kind of fascinating. And I went from being an Alonso fan to being, I think, because she's real. So she's also a McLaren fan. So
Mhm.
I became a McLaren fan. So I kind of got into all that. And then, of course, if you're a McLaren fan, you start learning about the history of the team. And Lewis is
Mhm.
there. And then right around the time that Lewis started speaking out on social issues, I was like, yeah, that's my boy.
Yeah.
Hence all the Lewis paraphernalia. So even though I'm rocking the Yuki Tsunoda gear today,
Which I love, and for the people listening, I will just tell you this T-shirt is amazing, and the hat is the official AlphaTauri hat, but the T-shirt is, like some Amazon.com purchase, I think you said, and
Amazon should pay for that spot.
yeah, they really should. Yeah, I'm sure they're gonna sponsor us right away. But the T-shirt is amazing, and if we can find a link to it, we will put it in the show notes so that you guys can check it out. Because I'm personally gonna buy one as soon as I can, if it's still out there on that website that shall be not named further. So yeah, I can relate a lot to a lot of that, by the way. Like when I first, even though I'm a very new fan compared to you and your lovely wife, who hopefully will be on the show in the future. And her name is Grace. You guys will all get to know her too. She's cool. And yeah, I totally, at first, I was like, I liked McLaren at first for some bizarre reason that I'm not sure of what it was. I don't even know. Then I was like, okay, there's these other guys, and I didn't become a Lewis fan really right away for some reason. I don't really remember what made me um decide that like he's my number one driver, and there are other drivers I like, of course. And I don't really like, do you still have any affinity for any like teams? Do you still ever feel like
Oh
really
gosh. So other sports leagues have spoiled me from loving a team. And keep in mind, I'm from the Washington D.C. area, so we don't win
mm,
around here. Like we don't have any championship teams. Other than the last two significant championships I think we've had were the Washington Mystics, which is WNBA, and the Washington Capitals, which is hockey. And the Capitals, it's just like it's like they just suffer so much that eventually had to win one. Beyond that, we have our Washington racial slurs, who have become the Washington
right,
Commanders, right?
right. Did they?
Um,
I thought they were gonna rename it.
they did.
Wasn't that
They were the Washington racial slurs, then they became the
right?
Washington. Was it the Washington football team? And then they
Oh,
recently changed to the Washington Commanders, which is the worst possible
wow,
name.
that's a bad name.
Yeah.
That's
To paraphrase one of my favorite personalities, Bomani Jones, I got off that narcotic. I left them in I think it was 2008 or 2009 and became a Baltimore Ravens fan. And
ah,
here's the thing. I'm done with them if they let go of Lamar Jackson, but that's NFL. That is that is not motorsport.
yeah,
So we're
that's
going to leave
cool.
that for the
That's cool
podcast.
though.
Yeah.
If you still watch the NFL, then one of these days we have to do a thing that Elle and I used to talk about, which is I think I've heard someone else maybe do it, but maybe we could do it better. Is like what each F1 team, which NFL team are they like? I
Yes.
mean, a lot of them just it writes itself. Like even though I'm not a big NFL person and don't know anything, I can already tell you that Ferrari is like the Cowboys, right? Like all this
Ooh,
heritage, all this history,
can't
but
win a
they don't actually
championship.
win much.
Yes.
I mean, that's and then so this will be a video in the future on YouTube, hopefully. Okay, so before we get into like way off track, so let me just remind everyone that you should follow us on the socials, on Twitter, on Instagram. Eventually, we hope to have more content on Instagram. I know we're not like super huge on there right now, but you guys should follow us anyway. We'll at least, if you're active on Instagram, we'll at least probably post like when there's a new episode, stuff like that. So follow us. They're both racing underscore incident on both Twitter and Instagram. And we are going to, as I've already alluded to, we are going to have a YouTube channel that Flip is going to be doing some editing for. And I'm sure it's going to be fabulous. And so we'll hopefully be making other stuff on there besides just posting video of the episodes, but we'll see. Bear with us. And yeah, just remember to subscribe to us if you're listening to this for the first time, just to check us out. Thank you. Hopefully, you like what you hear and give us a subscribe, give us a rating and review on whatever podcast platform you're listening on because that helps other people find the show, tell people about the show, like in actual IRL situations, if you want, or online or whatever. Like if you really like something on an episode, you can tweet about it, post it on some other social network, whatever. Tell your friends, tell your grandma, whoever. I don't know if your grandma would be into it, but you never know. Um, and yeah, we're gonna hopefully be doing a lot of cool stuff. We're gonna have a lot of cool guests. We've got a very cool guest that we're talking to now that hopefully we're gonna have on soon, and we're gonna have fingers crossed. We'll see. Um, watch this space, and yeah. So just follow us on all the things and give us your support, and hopefully we can make this the best era of racing incident yet. Um, so okay. Oh, one more thing. If you are listening to this and it's not yet Friday, which is what day? Friday's the 5th or the 6th, 7th? I don't even know.
It's a blur.
It's a time is a flat circle. But if you're listening to this and it's not yet Friday, you can join us. We've got an upcoming cool Twitter space we're doing, which is called Ask an F1 Engineer, because I have a friend who's an engineer at an F1 team. Of I can't say which team. I can't say much about them because this is not a sanctioned, like thing. But a bunch of people submitted questions on Twitter, and we posed all the questions to this mystery engineer, and we've got all the answers, and we're going to share them in this Twitter space. But if you can't make it, don't worry, it's going to be recorded. You can find information about it on our Twitter, but it's going to be on Friday at noon Central U.S. time, which is all kinds of other times in other time zones. Just check Google or whatever.
I have a question about this engineer.
Please go
Okay,
ahead.
this is just me. This is just me being
Nosy.
nosy. So I play F1 Manager, where you get to like create your team. Would this person be someone that I could put on my team as like a high-ranking official in a team, or are they more like someone who is kind of like the brains behind the mark?
Okay, well, I don't know anything about F1 Manager. What are the high-ranking officials?
So like
The
I literally rearranged everybody at Mercedes to be like Red Bull's aerodynamics team and things like that, because you got to do what you got to do to win, right? And so like
yeah, just
I'm
ask Aston Martin.
yeah, I was gonna say I basically pretended I was Lawrence Stroll, and I just hired all the most expensive people. So I grabbed, I think it was Enrico Balbo from Red Bull, a name that no one should know unless they play this game. But I had Enrico
Right.
Balbo, and he was making that car sing and dance. So, I,
Fantastic.
and I'm not saying it's Enrico Balbo is the person you're getting, but if it were, it would be like poetic justice, because I'd be like, Enrico, you helped me win 4 championships, and I won those 4 championships with both Lewis and George, and I got Lando on my anyway. I'm
That's okay. That's okay. I appreciate your excitement. I should mention, said F1 engineer will not actually be joining us on the space
mm,
because, if he were to do that, you would know who he is. I guess you could set up a, you know, dummy Twitter account or something, but that's a lot of work. And this person has a life, as does everyone else in Formula One or any other job. So I really don't want to make them have to go through that. So I really will just be like, I'll be like, here are the questions people asked, here are his answers. On some of them, I'll probably elaborate because I know him decently well at this point, and I think I would know what he meant by something if somebody. But yeah, I'll just basically be relaying his answer. So yeah, sorry.
it's okay. I'll just pretend it's
Yeah,
Enrico Balbo.
there you go. Just pretend. You can just pretend it's whoever you want. Um, okay, so I think that's it for housekeeping. So I think we should actually discuss the Australian Grand Prix for because it happened, and there were things that
It was a
happened.
thing that happened.
It was a thing that happened, and
Ah, it
boy,
was a
were there a
thing.
lot of things. So first off, what I kind of always like to ask, like, what is your like, big picture kind of takeaway from the race?
Ooh. First of all, if you hear the sound of galloping horses, that's our cats chasing each other through the house. As you can tell, they have not discovered the cat tree.
I really hope they're gonna make an appearance though, by the way, and this will be like I think that the YouTube's gonna like explode, right? Because everyone loves cats, am
Oh
I
yeah,
right?
oh yeah. If
So
it's about cats, we got that.
I mean, we're going to the moon,
I mean,
basically.
I've got like the fancy lighting and everything. I mean, we're real.
I know, I know. I
Um,
don't, as people could see if they're watching, because I yeah, I maybe I'll acquire one of those fancy lights
it's all
going
good.
forward. But
I
it's mood lighting. It's mood lighting. You understand? This is this is very like I feel like Lewis would be proud. Like it's very it's atmospheric
yeah, I was gonna
and
say
yeah.
we'll work on the lighting. But anyway, we're talking about big picture items. I think the big picture is that Red Bull is still running away with it, even though it feels like the gap is closed. And there's a bunch of other things that are kind of going on. But I think you and I were talking about how the way they're basically doling out penalties, it's not consistent. It is no good.
No, no, it's not. I mean, I think probably what everyone will remember from this race in years to come, well, at least I hope that this will be what they remember and that this doesn't become like the norm necessarily in all kinds of other races, is that this is actually a record. If people didn't know, there had never been 3 red flags in a Formula One race prior to this one that we just had, which is kind of crazy because there's been a lot of Formula One races. Although, again, like one thing that I always find funny is that like people talk about Formula One, heritage about like in the past, things that, but it only goes back to 1950, the championship. Obviously, there were things going on before that that eventually, became Formula One. But it's not that old a sport. I just want to say, just as a thing to mention, because people talk about it in these terms sometimes that are just like as if I mean, there's lots of sports are much much older.
You know, one of the things I find fascinating about Formula One is that when you engage in a conversation with people who've been following the sport, who are like, like history buffs of it,
Hmm.
um, I realize that there's a sense in Formula One that is different than, say, like basketball or football, where folks who have researched it going back like 60, 70 years, or well, 70 years, I guess,
Yeah.
they look at Formula One, they're like, well, there's Fangio, there's Jim Clark, there's all these great names. And you have to give these people a shine. You have to give them respect because they were the ones out there driving these cars when it was like potentially a death trap, you
I
know?
mean, it was a death trap even as late as like the 70s and the 80s, and I mean
Mhm.
it lessened as time went on. But yeah, there was I mean, that's why it's like I'm sure it's probably a part that everyone remembers from Rush, where they're
Mhm.
like 2 people die every season or something like that,
Mhm.
where they said they're like the odds are not good.
If you want a good
And
cry, watch the Senna documentary.
yeah, I hear it's good. It is on my list. It is on my
Yeah.
list. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Grace and I were talking about this. I feel like I'm pulling her slowly into this podcast. Um, but Grace and I were talking about how like one of the scenes that really hits hard is, at the Grand Prix where Senna dies, Roland Ratzenberger dies in a crash, and the drivers are having a meeting, and you see the interview, you see them all, the footage of them talking about should they have the race, and
Right.
Senna is talking about this with no clue, and we all know how it ends, right? We know that he's going to die, and we're watching a man who's about to die talk about competing in a Grand Prix, and
Mhm.
it does hit hard when you know how the story ends.
Yeah. Yeah, for
And
sure.
so again, I think the way people talk about the history of Formula One, I think that there's an effort to sort of like lionize these great, heroic figures from the past. But I think the danger, the gatekeeping component of it is that a lot of times it becomes sort of like, well, I know all about the exploits of like Jackie Stewart, and if you weren't around for
Right,
that,
right.
well, are
Yeah.
you even a fan? And
Yeah, and it's
yeah,
silly. It's silly when you think about it, right? Because people don't come with that attitude usually in like if you think about I don't know, like we mentioned I think basketball, right? Like the NBA in the US or other sports that we're accustomed to having people talk about. Like people don't behave that way
mhm,
about those sports. Like if I suddenly decided I'm not a huge a football fan. I mean, I'll watch stuff occasionally, but I'm not. But for some reason, tomorrow I decided that I'm going to become like a hardcore NFL fan, and I'm going to watch. I'm going to pick a team. Well, I mean, I guess I'd have to go with the Chicago Bears because that's where I live, and that's fine. But and I decided I was going to watch every game and get really into it and know everything. And I don't think I'd run into too many people that would be like, well, you're not a real fan because like you just started watching it
Right.
and you don't know anything. And I mean, I'm sure there is still the same kind of like, especially for women fans in all kinds of sports, we get kind of, there's a lot of assumptions about us, that we're not, we don't really know anything. We're just, we're here for like, I mean, in F1, of course, the thing that's constantly leveled against us is we're just here for the hot drivers, to which I say, why can we not be here for more than one thing?
Yes.
Um, Totally okay.
It's like
I
saying
mean,
guys are only watching Formula One for the grid girls.
yeah, I mean, like I'm sure some people thought that that was a great part of Formula One. I'm glad we don't have those anymore. But anyway, meanwhile, I think they still have them in MotoGP.
Yes, they do. The Umbrella Girls. They
I will.
stand
Yeah, Grace is gonna have to talk about that when we have her on at some point. I'd love to know more about why that's still a thing there. Okay, so yeah, I mean, in fact, something you were saying made me think of what for me was like a big picture aspect of this race was that we had these three red flags, which was unprecedented and had never happened before, and a lot of people are like upset about it, and a lot of I think a lot of even pundits and people were kind of questioning like, did we need a red flag here? Did we need a red flag there? I mean, I'm of the opinion that like if it really was a matter of safety, if someone thought it was a matter of safety, that it should have been a red flag, then that if that was the safe way to do it, then I'm okay with it. Like, I would it really have been better? Like a lot of people were saying, I feel like a lot of people felt that Albon going into the gravel was one where people were like, well, why do we need a red flag there? Because they could have just driven around behind the safety car, and at the time it's a fairly long lap. The safety car bunches everyone up. Can they just sweep the gravel during that time? And I'm like, I guess my thought is that like the people who are track marshals are unpaid volunteers. if
Mhm,
if if someone there thinks that I don't want cars going around while I'm doing this, then I'm okay with it. Like, I'm again, these people unpaid volunteers who
mhm.
are risking their lives for not for no money, for nothing at all, for just the passion and the the being able to contribute to a big event like this. People who are marshals are awesome, because they do it just for the love, really. you know
I think
and I'm okay with keeping them safe.
I was gonna say, I think with the Albon scenario that occurred, I think the issue was that they were using some sort of vehicle to help clear out some of the debris, some of the gravel, and
Yeah.
so if you have a vehicle out there, even if it's not on track, I think that's still an issue because I keep thinking about Gasly at Suzuka last year in the rain, and he doesn't
Well,
know
he
that
was
there's
right. I mean, that was insane. Like, why did that happen? I still don't we don't really still know, but hopefully it won't happen in the future, because that was crazy with like no visibility.
and
That was insane.
we had just had I think it was Ricardo at Monza. People were angry about that ending under a safety car because
Right.
oh my
Right.
gosh, he was on the side of the road. I'm like, yeah, he's on the
Yeah.
side. There's a vehicle there.
I mean, exactly. Like, I think that there's a lot of people are just a little too precious with like their attitudes towards these things. I feel like I don't have a problem with. I think it's better if they now, one might then question, do we need to have standing starts each
Right.
time? Maybe that's more the issue,
Well,
because it's
if
not
you
the
had,
red flag itself that maybe
I
is
was
the
gonna
issue. It's that you're going to have a standing start now where we already saw what happened.
I'm going to tell you why you might enjoy standing starts for these races, at least this season. And that is, it's an opportunity to watch Mercedes blow past Max Verstappen.
I mean, I don't know if that's gonna happen at every race though. Like,
Well,
let's just say,
his starts,
I I
his
think
starts are
this
not
was
good.
track specific. I think this was track specific. I think maybe they didn't have all their like, mapping things done correctly, possibly. Like Max is very like chill this season, as everyone keeps talking about, because his car is a rocket ship. So he's like, what the hell do I care if I don't get a perfect start, because I can just breeze past them in a few laps? Who cares? Which, you can't blame him there.
Oh yeah,
He's,
yeah.
he's got it on lock. He's like, well, it's okay, not a great start, no worries,
I
you know.
I think the interesting thing about Max though is that attitude of being chill and calm was not evident in Saudi Arabia when he was like, "I need to do the fastest lap."
Yeah, no, that was not evident then. It's true.
But
He's
the moment Checo is like out of the competition,
uh-huh, he's
Checo's
very
talking, he's
calm.
like,
He's very
"Oh,
calm. He's
I am the Zen
relaxed.
master. Oh."
Exactly, exactly. Which is kind of, I still find that crazy, because, so we've come back now. We didn't get to talk about that race obviously, but like I find that insane still, that he is actually legitimately worried about Checo challenging him for the title, or for, even a point for the fastest lap, for crying out loud, which is, it's crazy to me. It's crazy. Like and I mean, that's the way Max is, I guess, but like, really? I mean, I guess I already know the answer. The answer to really is yes, yes, really, because we all remember last season when it would have cost him nothing and didn't matter at all if he would have given Checo the position so that he could get second in the championship instead of Charles. And he was like, nah.
You know my reasons.
you, you that was like ominous. That was
I was like
scary.
I was like, "Are you breaking up with me, Max? I
Yeah,
don't know the
I
reasons."
know. I know. Yeah, he's like, Checo, it's not you, it's me. You know, I that was the beginning of the breakup, I think,
On the next
Uh
episode of Divorce Court, it's like, "I saw what you did at Monaco.
he's like, I have receipts.
You spun
I
on
kn-
purpose, and then you went to the club."
Yeah, he really did go to the club, didn't he? That was
Mhm.
after he'd had like his third kid, like literally like 2 days before or something like that. But he won Monaco. He was like, I'm gonna go hog wild. This is great.
And Max
Um,
Verstappen's mom had no problem bringing that up on social media.
No,
I'm like,
she didn't. No, that's still insane. Like, again, it's the Real Housewives of F1. Everyone knows it. Like there's no reason to hide from it. It's the way it is. When I was first introduced to Formula One, it was mostly through Drive to Survive, but it was also through. I mean, like I've told the story on the show before. Like we just for some reason put on the Monaco Grand Prix because it was trending on Twitter or something. People were like talking about it, and we were like, "What is this?" And we put it on, and we didn't know understand what was happening or what's going on. And my husband didn't end up becoming like a big fan like me, and also, I mean, that's for the best, because otherwise, no one would be able to watch our child. Um, it would it would be a problem. So
motorsports?
it's probably
Children.
yeah, it's probably for the best that it turned out this way. But in any event, we started watching Drive to Survive, and of course we watched all of it, and then I went down the rabbit hole deep, 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 and have hoovered up everything I could. But like, uh, when I first started watching Drive to Survive, I knew I had a few friends that were just online friends that I knew were into Formula One, because they lived in Europe and they had been watching it for, decades. And so I asked them I started asking them questions like, what is this? What is that? Who's that? What does this mean? And they would tell me stuff. And that's how I got started. And I to this day I remember that one of those friends was like, the important thing you need to understand about Formula One is that there's this racing stuff going on, but then there's everything else. And he's like, it's a soap opera on four wheels. And this was un- understand that this was somebody telling me this who had not even watched Drive to Survive,
Mm.
who was not a Drive to Survive fan, who had been watching for years and years and years. So I think it's important that people understand this, because we get people who are Drive to Survive fans who came to it through Drive to Survive primarily, get labeled as like these not real fans, as just these people who are into the drama, etc. But like, people who've been watching Formula One for decades and decades and decades will all tell you the same thing too. It has always been that way. You just didn't have a person with a camera and a boom mic there necessarily for every conversation or whatever, and you didn't have people sitting in a dark room, um you know talking about things and you didn't have Will Buxton, making big pauses and then saying dramatic things, or so he thinks they're dramatic. Um, you know, but it's always been like this. And I get irritated when people who are more, longtime fans talk about it this way, as if like in the past there was like some time of like sporting purity, where in the past it wasn't about the entertainment, it was about the racing. And that it wasn't, it was never. And then Liberty Media and Drive to Survive and all these fans who are, who just think the drivers are hot and just want to follow them on TikTok and whatever, came here, and now it's all for the show. And people were saying these red flags were for the show, that's why they did all these red flags, so that you could have these dramatic standing starts after them. When in fact, like, again, like, we don't know how long would it have taken them to clean up all that gravel, from Albon going into the gravel. I don't know, but they would have had to have been going around the safety car for, I don't, how many laps, we don't know. Like,
Right.
because again, they would have only been able to clean the track in that spot when the cars aren't there, which is for whatever part of the lap. Then they would have had to, I don't know, it could have been like as many as, like, let's say 5 laps. I don't know
Mhm.
how long it would have taken them to clean it up, but let's say 5 laps. Is that more entertaining? Is that what you want to see? You want to see him drive around behind the safety car? I mean, let me say, I love Burt Maylander, and my dream is to drive the safety car, even though I don't know how to drive a manual transmission. But anyway,
I don't think it's a manual. I think it's paddle shifter.
really? Oh,
I'm
okay. Well, but you still have to like understand when to,
Well, most paddles are gonna
shift.
be semi-automatic anyway, so
Oh, okay.
I
All right.
mean,
Well, that I feel okay. That
we should
means I could
research
do it.
this.
uh call me up, Formula One. I'm ready. Because yeah, I mean, I find the safety car, I think, is amazing. Like, everyone, people who listened to us before our rebirth period here, will remember that we always wax poetic about the safety car and how much we wanted to drive it, because you can like pretend you're leading the race, at least that's what I'd be doing. And I still find it hilarious. Like, do you guys remember, like, I think it was at this race, when they're in the cool down room, Max was like, "Yeah, it was so hard when it was like this and the safety car's going so slow." And I'm like, "Max, stop complaining about the safety car going slow. Like, I can't take it anymore." Like, he's one of the biggest complainers. If people remember last season, there was this thing with the Aston Martin safety car that they
Mhm.
said was slower than the Mercedes one.
To be
Yeah,
fair, it
they
was.
that's right. It was like they called it like the green turtle. Remember?
Yeah.
Because it was, yeah, because it's like the Vantage or whatever, their cars that they're promoting with that. And I was like, I mean, I did think that was hilarious that it was slower, because this year, if that happened, that wouldn't be funny anymore, because last season the Aston Martin was slow, and now not so much.
Lawrence Stroll took that personally. He was like, "Oh,
I'm
our
sure. I'm
car our
sure.
car is slow, okay." I
I'm sure he did. I'm sure. Like, yeah, he was like, "Oh, Aston Martin has dropped half a point in the stock market. This is all Max Verstappen's fault." Anyway, so yeah, I find it hilarious when they complain about the safety car going slow, because I'm like, "What do you guys? What do you want from the safety car here?"
I can answer that question. This is one of the few things I know because I do sim racing, and sim racing, as we all know, is a completely accurate rendition of everything there is to do with Formula One.
Of course, we could put you in a Formula One car and you'd be good to go.
And I would like to point out that if the opportunity ever arose, I would gladly take it. So here's the thing. And in fact, I have see. This is where I feel bad because I wound up defending Max Verstappen every time we have a conversation involving him. He's not the only one who complains about it. I think if you listen to almost any of the race leaders, including
I know,
including
I
my hero,
know.
my Lord and Savior, um, you'll hear them complain about the safety car. But it's all about getting that heat into the tires, and when they're all and the safety car is never going to go
I
fast
get
enough.
it. I get it. Do not blame the safety car though for Pirelli's sins. You know what I mean?
I know,
Like,
but even
it's
Pirelli, who I must make apologies for, they're just doing what the FIA and Formula One are telling them to do. They're like, make a
yeah,
tire that goes away if make a soft tire that goes
right.
away in like 10 laps. Go. And Pirelli's like,
Yeah,
oh.
yeah. That's true. That's right. So you can't really blame anyone. I get it. Okay, first of all, on the radio they all complain, yes, about the safety car going slow. When the person who's the race leader, especially, of course, will be complaining.
Mhm.
And in fact, I don't know if you ever saw, but there was this really fascinating interview with Bernd Maylander, and I think it was in German, but I think it wasn't even that long. But he did talk about how, like, drivers drive differently behind him depending on who it is. Like he said Lewis will be like, he said something about Lewis likes to, like, I don't think he's probably not doing it on purpose, but he's like Lewis is always like hiding. Like I have to look at my mirrors, like where is he? Where is he? he's he's hiding. And then he said, I think in the past, I think I've heard him talk about, that Max will definitely be like right on your ass, and then other, but yeah, so they all complain, but Max is the only one who I've heard complain outside of the car. At least to
True.
my recollection, there have been other people too, but he's complained in press conferences, like last year with the Aston Martin Green Turtle. I heard in the cool down room at this race, he's like, "Yeah, the safety car's going so slow," and like I'm sure they all feel the same way. But like, do not slander my man Burnt Maylander. That's all I'm gonna say. Like, he is a fantastic driver, and he is doing his best. Okay, I'm done. All right,
I feel like we had like an emotional like moment there
we did,
on
we
behalf of
did.
the safety car.
I mean, everyone needs to understand this. I love the safety car. Don't slander Burnt. Just don't do it. I mean, the man's been doing that for over 20 years or something like that. So, and again, he's not driving a Formula One car. He's going as fast as he can. So, shut up. All right.
So you did
Um,
raise a point though about Formula One. Is it a sport or is it entertainment? And I think the safety car is at the core of that conversation because the
say
choices they
more.
yeah, I was gonna say because the choices they make about whether to go red flag something or safety car is in part to figure out how to put on the best show. I mean, it is entertainment,
Hmm.
but they have to they have to also factor in safety. They have to also factor in, all the sporting regulations that they allegedly are sticking to, which, well, I'm gonna bite my tongue.
Yeah, that's fine. You can unbite it later. But yeah, I mean, what and been a big topic of discussion, of course, this week. After the race of the three red flags and everything, and people saying that it's for the show, and you know, again, I think people need to understand reality. They need to look at it in the mirror and accept it. It's like how when you have like we've all had like those times in our life when we thought that we looked better than we actually do, right? Like, and then someone takes a photograph and you look at it and you're like, oh no, right? Like we've all been there. You went to an event, let's say, you thought you were looking good, and then someone took a photograph and you were like, "Oh my god, who is that person? That doesn't look like me. I thought I looked a lot better than that. That doesn't seem right." So it's like that's how I feel like people look at Formula 1 a lot of the time. They look at it as what they want it to be instead of what it actually is. You have to accept it for what it actually is to some degree. Like,
Do you
I want to push for things to change and to get better, but there are certain parts, like that aspect of the fact that it's always going to be entertainment and sport, and that they're always going to be straddling that line. And then some cases they go further to one side than the other. I think people need to just accept that sort of to a degree.
Do you think that that is because people have bought into the idea that Formula One is the pinnacle of motorsport, and so therefore it must be better and awesome and perfect, and every
Um,
other series is somehow inferior in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of negative things to say about that whole idea too. The pinnacle of motorsport, like, I mean, it's the pinnacle of. I have a friend on Twitter who's a long time IndyCar watcher. She pays some attention to F1 and other racing series, but she's primarily into IndyCar, and she is like, it's not the pinnacle of motorsport; it's the pinnacle of marketing,
Yeah.
which is basically that's the reality. Like F1 is, especially in the Liberty Media era, have phenomenally marketed themselves, have done a amazing job of selling the product to people and getting people interested in it and watching it on TV and consuming all their content, buying merch, whatever. They've done an amazing job, right? And for that, we can applaud them. But is it really the pinnacle of motorsport? I mean, that's not a question that anyone can really answer. I feel like it's subjective, like all like anything else. It's the pinnacle of I would say probably engineering and ingenuity and that type of thing. I think it's safe to say that that's true, because obviously we have teams who are all building their own cars and all have to come up with, I mean, other than obviously people are buying components and stuff, but they have to create their own car, and it's a new car technically every race weekend in a sense, and all this, and it's a, so that part is maybe the pinnacle of something. But you know our people talk about like these are the 20 best drivers in the world, for example. People love to say that, right? I mean, I know a lot of drivers in other racing series who would disagree and would not necessarily be wrong.
Yeah.
These drivers are the best, in a sense, you
They're
know.
also they're also the ones who have the most sponsorship, the ones who have,
Mhm.
the most, I guess you could say, accessibility to the European series.
Mhm.
Um, it's hard for me to look at the sheer number of people involved in motorsports, for example, in Asia, and look around and go like, "Hey, my boy Yuki, Alex Albon, who has, I believe, both Thai and British affiliation,
Right.
so I really want him to win a race just to make sure I know which national anthem he's gonna go for. It's probably gonna be the British, but,
I no, I think he actually does. You know how in their race suits they have the little flag and the whatever. He does race under, it would be the Thai national anthem, I believe,
which I have
because
never heard, and I think
that would be cool. That
most
would be
people would.
cool. Yeah. Maybe
It
someday.
whenever they have, like, live musicians performing the anthems, I just wonder, like, did they ever go, "Oh, crap. We weren't ready to play, like, the French national anthem because Ocon won at Hungary. Oh, we didn't even rehearse that." You know? That, like, I think,
I do wonder about that too. Yeah, yeah.
like, there's
I
someone,
think
like, breaking out the sheet music, handing it out to people like, "Come on, we gotta get ready."
they must have them all on hand just in case. They must.
They have to,
They
and I
have to.
mean,
Yeah, just in case. Just in case.
and that
Yeah.
might be the real reason they don't want Andretti in Formula One. They're like, "Oh, does anyone really wanna do the American anthem?" I mean,
Mm,
and we're like,
yeah.
"Yeah, we got that."
Yeah. Yeah, I have a lot of feelings about, all of that, but we'll have to save it for another episode, I think. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's is again, just people just need to remember that it's always going to be not just a sport. It is a sport in a sense, in that of course these drivers are athletes, especially nowadays. They're obviously extremely fit and all this. And although let's be 100% honest, some of them are like what I would consider real athletes, where they could probably play other sports and do well, and some of them are not. Some of them are just good at driving, which is okay. Like they don't, like when Lando Norris posts pictures on his Instagram of himself like training shirtless at the beach with like his trainer doing like, they're like doing boxing stuff, they're doing this, they're doing that. I'm like, Lando, I mean, you're doing too much. Like there's no need for this. Like I don't think that's his strength, so to speak. I mean, obviously he's fit to drive the car and he's an excellent driver, but and I mean, I know he enjoys golf. I don't know like exactly how good at it he is, but a lot of these guys cannot do anything else. And that's fine. Like it's okay. Like when they had that video with Charles um Carlos, Carlos was like, I'm better than Charles at every sport, and then Charles was like, except driving. And it was the most amazing moment ever,
Oh, the
honestly,
daggers of,
because
uh,
it was amazing. It was amazing. Because that's, I mean, like that's true. Arguably, one would say. I mean, Carlos is he's very athletic. He is really good at all these other sports, but Charles is better than him at
ah,
driving. So,
you're
at
gonna make
least in his
you're gonna
opinion.
make so you're gonna get me all the, CL16 lovers out there are gonna hate me because
Mm.
I stand
Oh,
for
you
Carlos.
don't agree?
Well, no, it's not that I
Oh,
don't agree that Carlos is not as good as Charles. I think it's that Charles has better one lap pace, and I think that is probably the key to why we think of him as being better. But then when I think about the bonehead things he does,
I
um,
mean, yeah, but you got to admit his race pace is also usually faster. Like he's typically faster.
true,
Not always,
but when I look
but
at like across the season, we've got what a sample size of I think of what 2 seasons now with him, or is it 3? I forget.
this is only the no, this is actually the third one, isn't it? With the two of them, I think
So
it's the
because I know
third
the
one.
first season, Carlos matched him on points,
Yeah, or he
and
outscored him technically, but it
yeah,
was, there were extenuating circumstances. And also back then you could say that they weren't fighting for anything, although are they fighting for anything now? That's That's
they're fighting for 4th because apparently
yeah.
Aston Martin and Mercedes are gonna be ahead of them, so
I mean, I don't think that's going to be every race. Like we'll see. I think that this was to some degree very track specific for Mercedes. Unfortunately, I hate to tell people
so
who are.
I have to go to therapy for something. I root actively against Ferrari, the team,
Hmm.
but I like all the people who are the faces of that team. Like, I like Carlos, I like Charles. I
Hmm.
mean, I just slandered Charles a little bit there by saying, "Oh, Carlos is just as good," but
Well,
and to be fair,
that's fair. I think that's slander that everyone can agree with, even Charles himself,
I mean,
because
they're
as you'll recall, he was very like keen to always take responsibility when he would make a mistake. And in fact, speaking about the Australian Grand Prix, I mean, Carlos qualified higher than him. Mostly on merit, I would say. I mean, I know they had that thing with they weren't sure. They thought it was
Mhm.
going to rain. They were checking the weather. I saw people joking they were checking the weather in Austria, not Australia. Ferrari got a little confused,
Yeah, those
as
are very
as they
different
do.
tracks.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a very Ferrari thing to have happen, right? But he did in the post qualifying interviews. He was like, yeah, he was like, I didn't do a good job. I didn't drive my best, basically. And I think it's actually fascinating that I feel like, well, Lando now did well at the Australian Grand Prix, but I do I wonder that if we're going to see, let's say him and Charles sometimes having problems, doing their best because they're less motivated, because they're both considered to be, amazing talents, and they're at these, kind of mediocre sort of teams in a sense.
Yeah, I feel like job number 1 is always beat your teammate. So, like, Carlos and Charles are looking at each other every day like, "Well, as long as I beat that guy, I don't have to worry about the team replacing me." And I think
Do
Lando
you think that's why Carlos was so upset at
I
the end of this race with what happened?
I
I mean,
think
I
the
don't think we need to. Everyone who's listening, I'm sure, knows what happened, so I'm not gonna
yeah, we
go through. Everyone knows. I'm assuming you guys know. I'm not gonna explain every little thing. If why else would you be listening to this unless you know what happened? So yeah, I mean, do you think that maybe that's part of it? Because Carlos's contract, I think, is up this year.
Oh, I didn't know
Um,
that.
I think it might be. I could be wrong. I'll check it for when I do our show notes that I hope everyone reads, because please do. I actually put a lot of effort into them. So I'm just letting you guys
Please.
know. Read the show notes. Look at it. Absorb it. Click on the links. Okay. Um
Made with care.
yes, made with love. With love. With love and care. Yeah, because yeah, I mean, we might as well talk about that now. Like that was something that I definitely wanted to talk about because there's definitely been a lot of discourse. I'm sure you've heard in our kind of community of Lewis fans, right? There's been a lot of people who are kind of like not feeling it in
Mhm,
terms of Carlos being so upset about the horrible injustice of what occurred to him. And I will say, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it feels awful. I'm
mhm.
sure it sucks to go from, you worked all race long for this position, and now they're just going to take it away from you in this, sort of idiotic manner, right? Like, let's be fair. It's even though I do think everything was done according to the rules, as far as his situation anyway. Um, I still think that we can say it was done according to the rules, and yet the result is still feels like unjust and not really what maybe should have happened.
Mandatory sentencing guidelines, right? Like,
There you go. There you
you
go.
know, the law
That's
has no
right.
wiggle room, you have to pay the price.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think it was heartbreaking to watch as he got the word that, he was gonna have this penalty, and I think one of the interesting parts for me was, yeah, it was his fault, but, like, there have been there were other collisions. I think, you'll probably mention some of them, I think, as we go through all the places where we're like, "I don't know." I mean, because we could play the whataboutism game, right? Like, "Well, what about this one, or what about that one?" And I think that at its core, yeah, I mean, he could have faced a penalty, but I think to some degree, um, they were just trying to basically come up with a way to say, okay, there's been, Alonso through no fault of his own basically got like booted or punted or shunted. as they like to say in Formula One broadcast. My favorite word is shunt. Like they shunted
I
him.
like that word
I
too.
know. I
I'm
look for an
also a
excuse to use that.
fan.
I look for an excuse to use that word all the time now, and it's just
You just need to
kind
go
of
out
fun.
and get into an accident, and then you come home, and Grace is like, "What happened?" And you're like, "Oh, I had a shunt."
Yes, exactly. Um, but uh, but what I was going to say is that I think to some degree they were trying to be fair towards the driver who was who was injured, so to speak, by this, which is
Right.
here's Alonso, he's cruising along, and boom, suddenly he's spun, and he's like crap. So I get that they wanted to stick it to Carlos a little bit to kind of go, hey, you can't screw another driver's race, even though the actual context of it was fairly like it was for me a borderline racing incident, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not looking to have the Spanish Armada descend on us after one podcast, but
It's fine. Let him come.
yeah, well,
Let him come. I don't care. Yeah, don't worry.
I mean, I can
I'll
bring out
take
the
care of him.
Alonso hat for the next podcast, and that way all the Team LH people will be like, "You're not a real Team LH, or you got this Alonso hat."
Yeah, I gotta talk to you about that, my man,
Well,
because
I
I
mean,
don't think I personally don't think you can be both. I'm gonna go ahead and say that I think that that's just not morally right. And that's where I stand. Yes, that's right. I'm putting it on the same level of "Thou shalt not kill." Thou shalt not be a Lewis and an Alonso fan. Those are my feelings.
it's more
And
like okay. Think of it this way: it's like I find Alonso entertaining. He is
sure.
he is a troll's troll. He trolls everyone. I'll never forget there was a race in Sochi in Russia where he said everyone else is like cutting the corner,
Yes.
and then he just says, "Fine, I'll do it," and gain like a couple of positions. And
Yeah,
he was like,
that was amazing.
and I just thought like, yeah, troll them with make the rules consistent by trolling them. Be the guy who goes to the edge. And this is where I'm gonna wind up being like a Max Verstappen fan in the eyes of people. But like I enjoy like the way people go up to the edge of the rules. Like when
Yeah.
Verstappen rolled forward in his grid box, and I was like, ooh, I think he went
Yeah,
over.
I wanted to talk to you about that because like I still don't have here's what I think about that. I I don't feel first of all like I actually have clarity on whether that what he did is allowed or not. Well, again, in Formula One, what is and isn't allowed is a very squishy concept. So even just saying that much already, I'm like, this is what's the point of having this conversation? But I guess we're gonna have it. Is that I when I watched the broadcast, I was at that point. Often I'll have the international feed on, but I did watch a lot of the F1 TV commentary also, and they did I don't know if this was maybe after the race, it might have been after the race. They had Sam Collins showing why basically this was not Max breaking the rules. He was like, well, part of it is that like it's the angle and the lighting and the this and it makes it look like the tires are further than they are, and then also that the rule is that like that has to be that some millimeter of the tire still has to be in contact with the line basically. So
Mhm.
he's saying that it's not breaking the rule because it's going right up to the edge, but not quite going over it. But then when he mentioned how far, and everyone saw what it looked like, how far ahead he was in the grid box. Like everyone saw, like we saw it with our own eyes. It wasn't exactly like hard to determine that he was definitely. But the rule states that as long as part of your tire is in contact with the line, that's and so that's like a thing you could see Alonso doing like the same thing, right? Like
Oh
I'm
yeah,
sure
yeah. I expect
that
every driver will start to do it now
I
because
think
he's
so.
established
Yeah.
a new precedent. So
That's right. That's right. I mean, they do, but then a precedent. That's something that else we were going to talk about. There's still no consistency in their application of penalties of whatever. There's still not a consistency. A lot of people talking about the fact that Logan Sargent didn't get penalized. Other people didn't get penalized. Uh, it's like if you're going to apply a rule, you have to apply it consistently to somebody, whether they're at the front, in the middle, in the back, whatever. It doesn't matter. And people
mm.
are noticing that that's not happening, and people always notice it, but it's still pretty bad. in
You
terms of
it's interesting you say that because I think that's where Formula One and motorsports kind of differ from stick and ball sports because you know how we always talk about like in the NBA, there's like that foul wouldn't be called in the playoffs, or that foul won't be
mhm,
called in the fourth quarter, or it won't be called on a superstar because superstars get different calls than like regular rank and file players.
mhm.
I kind of feel like Formula One is less likely to favor a superstar because the type of fouls they get into, I think, are much more an issue of safety. So if you're doing things that put other people's lives in jeopardy, obviously you're going to get a penalty. Um,
Unless you brake test someone in Jeddah.
oh, you know, I can't count how many times I looked at the telemetry and saw the brake test, but it wasn't until Adrian Newey had the interview where he said, yeah, Max should have brake tested him. And I was like, there you go, smoking gun. You know, his aerodynamicist literally says, "Yeah, we all knew he brake tested him." I'm like,
There you go.
but they're
Anyway, yeah, I
yeah,
mean, that's
not that
that
I'm
one would
salty or
say.
bitter.
Yeah, I'm not bitter at all. No.
It's okay.
Yeah,
We got to drink their bitter tears for like 7 years, so
I mean, whatever. Like, again, I want everyone to understand, I don't really have team loyalty. I have
I'll be.
mostly only driver loyalty.
I have to
And that
change.
for
I
me.
have to change shirts.
Oh no. Oh no, Flip is gonna put on a different shirt. Hopefully this will be something pro Lewis. Otherwise, I'm going to be quite upset and fire him from this unpaid job. And nobody wants that. Oh, okay, there we go. Yes, that's better. Although again, I don't really have necessarily love for Mercedes or for anyone. I have love for Lewis. I like my man Yuki, like we were talking about. I like Alex Albon. I like who else do I like? I don't know. There are some people I'm ambivalent about. Some I'm just whatever. You're there. It's cool. It's fine. And then some I actively strongly dislike. Of course, Max being one of those. Sorry, Max fans, you can try to convince me otherwise if you want. It's probably not going to work.
I just
But
have to say that I think we should run a poll of who's the most likable driver on each team. Like, do you like Max or Checo? And I think the fun one
yeah.
will be Ocon or Gasly. I think
I
that
mean, I
starts
think
like a
depends.
French Civil War right there.
Yeah, well, they've already started it, I guess, at the end of at the end of the race. Did you see their they had they put out like a little they had like a video on Instagram of them. I think I want to say they're on a plane probably flying back to Europe. That's what it looked like anyway. But yeah, they were like, "Oh, hi guys." They did their little message. It was very yeah, it didn't seem like their hearts were in it, I would say.
Until Pierre refers to him as SD Bestie, I'm not buying anything.
No, they're not. I mean, they're not. They haven't been friends for a long time. They're not going to be friends. I'm sure going forward. I'm like, whatever. Who cares? You don't have to be friends. You just have to be professional. Speaking of people being professional, I think that this is an important question about that we were talking about. Like, okay, maybe you need to do a red flag, but do you really need to do a standing start? Like, of course, I get it. People probably love the fact that there and I and on a certain level, of course, I loved it too. But then maybe we need to question if these are the 20 best drivers in the world when these guys on the restart are are doing terrorism and like are they really the 20 best drivers when Pierre Gasly apparently doesn't know how to use his mirrors, when Lance Stroll hasn't done anything really that bad in this race but has plenty of other times.
Wow,
And
you're like rolling that bus over all of them. You're like Lance
I
Stroll, collateral
I'm
damage. Got shots for
I'm sorry.
you.
I sorry, but I gotta tell it like it is.
Okay, okay,
Um,
but just remember our boy Lewis, he and Alex Albon, he kept that man from winning a race and getting on a podium at least.
I know. It's not. I mean, Lewis isn't perfect. First of all,
There's an
like,
alternate universe where Alex Albon is still at Red Bull just based on the fact that people saw him win a race.
well, then Lewis did him a favor.
He's driving a Williams.
You know what? That he is. That he is. But I believe that in his heart of hearts, he's happier than when he was with those toxic people who raced him so hard, as he said. I mean, look at Alex. He's thriving. He's got his platinum blonde hair.
True.
He's living his best life.
He
You know,
has he has the most stable romantic relationship of any of the drivers we
yes.
know because Charles
Yes.
broke up with his girlfriend. Lando broke up with his girlfriend. That's right. I'm a guy and I'm tracking what's going on here. Not
Yeah.
just for the ladies here.
You
'Cause
love to see it.
because you got to know what's going on through their minds. I mean, I
You do.
still
Like, that's so important. Like, do you know what? I was just thinking the other day, how is it that they do not yet have a person in commentary, at least part of the time, visiting occasionally, who is like a psychiatrist or a psychologist? Like, how is it that because they're constantly, and I actually get very irritated a lot of the time when they are assuming things about the driver's state of mind, or they're wondering, like, could they be feeling this way or that way?
Mhm.
You know, I, a lot of the time it's wrong in my
Absolutely.
like they're so often wrong. Like they tend to think like all racing drivers are the same, or like this guy, like how many times have you been listening to, whether it's during the race, or whether it's something after or before, when they're talking about like, well, surely he must be this, and I'm like, no, no, do you not know anything about this man? Like, you are clueless.
I, I think I think my favorite myth is the one about the dog in them and the killer instinct because it's clear that there are some athletes, not all. In fact, I'll even say probably most have to have that like I'm going to crush you, I'm going to destroy you type mentality. Um, but I think there are some who excel who don't have that. And again, I'm dragging other sports into this. I get this from my wife, but like we were watching this thing about trash talkers, and if you're familiar with the NBA, Kevin Garnett is one of the most vile,
Hmm.
this evil trash talkers. And he was talking about Tim Duncan, who is like, he's like, it's like talking to a stone wall. And he said that the trash talking from Tim Duncan was the worst because he wouldn't even talk to you in complete sentences. He would just say things like, nice try. Maybe try doing a hit fake to the left. That was
That's
close.
awesome. That's awesome.
Gotcha. you know? And I'm just like, yeah, you don't have to be like, crushing someone. Although, let me put this out there. I am very partisan about like my trash talk. I do love trash talk. I was actually inflamed by all the stuff about the women's, championship
Oh my god,
final.
me too.
I
Yeah.
I have Keith
Yeah.
Olbermann. Keith Olbermann. I just want to put this out
Oh
there to you.
yeah, you're on my shit list, Keith Olbermann. And then, I mean, I'm glad Shaq ratioed you, but nevertheless, it was a dumb thing to say. And I have to send you, if you haven't seen it, there's this clip of, actually, you probably did see it because I posted it on our Twitter, of like this guy on some sports show that I've never heard of or seen, talking about the whole situation with I'll put a link for you guys in the show notes if you want to see. But yeah, Keith Olbermann, just be quiet, basically. But yeah, like I do also love, I do love when someone's very like in your face trash talking, but I do love the subtle shade too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
And
those
there's
are,
room, I think, for all types of competitors. And
yeah.
the thing I appreciate about Lewis is that he's evolved over time. Like I mean, okay, I talked about people who like talk about the history of Formula One, and here I am dragging up history because I know a little bit of it. But like one of the fun things is to look at like who Lewis was, like when he started his career and how he's kind of evolved over time, both in terms of his on track and off track persona.
Yeah.
And what I find fascinating is that he's dealt with some crap just being the only black guy in the paddock. Well, not in
Yeah.
the paddock, but like the only black driver. And I
Hmm.
mean, Willie T. Ribs, I love you. You test drove a Formula One car, but like Lewis gets the mark for being the first black driver to actually race in F1. And I think,
Hmm.
one of my favorite moments, by the way, was seeing, Willie T. Ribs actually, talking to Lewis. I think it was at Miami last year.
Yeah. Yeah. He was
And
at Miami. Yeah.
yeah, so like that was a cool moment. And like I don't know, I look at it and I just look at Lewis and I go like, yeah, I know what it's like to be the only black guy in the room. And even worse,
Hmm.
people don't know I'm black, so they're saying things about black people, but that's a story for another day. Um,
Yeah.
but like
It's okay. Let it all out. Let it all
No,
out. This
no,
is a
no.
group therapy session.
Holding
It's
it in,
fine.
holding it in.
All right.
But
All right. All
but,
right.
like, Lewis lives in a fascinating space because he is literally the outsider, and he's also the best.
Right.
And I often find it fascinating. In fact, you were talking about their relationships. I get a kick out of little gems we get, like finding out that Mick Schumacher, Esteban Ocon, and Lance Stroll hang out together.
Right. I
They're
love
like
that kind of
boys,
stuff.
you know?
Yeah, yeah, they're
Um,
bros. Don't you remember last season when they were asking they were when Mick's future was still in question, as to whether where he was going to go and if he was going to have a seat or not. Every chance he got when they would ask Esteban about whether he's like, "Yeah, I'd love to have Mick at Alpine,
mhm.
obviously we're friends and that would be awesome." And I was like, "Oh, that's so cute."
Yeah, yeah,
Like that's
yeah.
like when you recommend your friend for like a job because you want them to work where you work. Like it was adorable. And he kept being at pains to be like, of course I have nothing to do with it. I'm not the one who decides, blah blah blah. I think eventually they probably even told him like, Esteban, stop. Like because
We're looking at your nemesis Pierre, okay?
yeah, we're not getting your friend. I'm sorry, just stop saying stuff.
We're going hard the
But
other way. We're gonna get out of
yeah,
your friend, we're gonna get your most hated enemy.
right,
Um,
right. We're going another way. And yeah, so that was always adorable. And I mean, I think those things are all really important. And actually those things are all things that usually it is more female fans that talk about oftentimes a lot of those things. And I think people who are, I'm glad that you're not this way, but lots of other male fans, I should say straight male fans, whatever, since that's like, since, queer people don't exist, according to
what?
many. Well, that's what I've heard. The reason I've heard that is, for example, people always saying that like women only watch for the drivers. Well, I mean, I guess women who are gay don't exist, because there or women who maybe aren't into this type of guy or whatever, or women who are I don't know, or I guess gay men don't exist who might also be interested in the drivers. I guess people, all sorts of people don't exist. I don't know
I
if you
I
knew
feel like
this.
I feel like I must be gender fluid because I drive a Subaru. But I also have a Corvette and a Tesla, so, like, I'm all over the place here.
Wow, wow, dropping the that I've got all these cool cars, but yeah,
They're
all right,
old. They're old cars, but they're good.
I
Well, the
see you.
Tesla
I
isn't.
see you. It's cool. It's cool. Yeah, I don't have and mine. I have. We have two Mazda CX-5s, which are
Oh,
nice.
sporty, though. I mean, you got the
Yeah,
crossover, but
yeah,
you had to go with Mazda because 'cause it's got the yeah.
yeah. And of course, I have the turbo. So I mean, I don't know if I can tell the difference to be quite honest, but people have told me that like our older one's not the turbo and the newer one's the turbo, and
Ah.
people are like, if you go back to driving the older one you'll be able to tell it's not the turbo, and I have done that a few times and I still don't think I can tell, but anyway, um it's a I recommend Mazda's great. You guys, Mazda should sponsor us. Okay.
We are so off topic here.
It's okay, that's totally fine because that's going to happen in every episode. I just want everyone to understand that if you came here for like detailed race analysis, this is not the show for you. Um, I'll just be honest.
You're gonna get little gems of knowledge here
You're
and
gonna
there.
get That's right. You're gonna get a lot of gems of knowledge, a lot of opinions, a lot of things like I feel like we need to touch just a bit on the whole Michael Massey of it all. I feel like it's just here's why. Um, it's not just. I want people to understand that if you're a Lewis fan or if you're whatever kind of fan you are, it doesn't matter. I would expect that no matter who you're a fan of, that you would have thought that Abu Dhabi 2021 was not a good look for the sport. When I say sport, I put it in quotes again because of what we talked about earlier. It's
Mhm.
never just purely a sport, and it never will be. Sorry, to just deal with it. Um, and so what happened in Abu Dhabi was not good, not okay, and not good for the sport. And it was not the correct thing that should have happened. And for people to say that you're only upset about it if you're a Lewis fan or you're only upset about it if you're a Mercedes fan is to me um is is silly, because I don't think that's true that it's only Lewis and Mercedes fans who are unhappy with how that all went down. I mean, I think that most people who consider themselves fans of the sport as a whole, people who are neutral fans who don't necessarily have a favorite driver, there were. I mean, I mentioned my F1 engineer friend earlier, who I'm gonna answer questions that people post to him in this Twitter space we have coming up. They told me that there were people that considered leaving their jobs in Formula One because of what happened in Abu
Wow.
Dhabi. Like, because people who work at these teams, you have to understand that they are just as passionate and just as competitive and just as, driven to win as the drivers, as their mechanics, as whoever else. 10% of the team goes to the track, but there's a huge group of people, obviously, as we're always told, although some drivers never ever mention it. um uh the, that
Not
there are
naming
all
any
these.
names though, are you?
No, no, of course not. um that or very rarely mention it. So, you know that, yeah, I that's what I was told. And this person, of course, knows people at other teams too, who've been working in Formula One for a long time. And there were people that were like, yeah, I'm not sure I can keep going after this, because what is it all for? If something like this can happen, if I've worked this hard, or I've done, and something like this could happen, to just take something away from someone who rightfully earned it. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? And I we still don't have a broad consensus of support among the commentators, the pundits, all the people who, you know, are presenting various things and who are there in the paddock at every weekend or at many weekends, whatever. There's still not that consensus that what happened in Abu Dhabi in 2021 was a disgrace and was really bad, and has not actually been resolved. In the sense
Hmm.
that the FIA did this, like, quasi, investigation. They fired Michael Massey, but let's face it, Michael Massey was not the only part of the problem. Now we see that. And as far as, even at the time that it happened, I was at pains to always be telling people that Michael Massey is just the sacrificial lamb here,
Right, right.
in a sense. Yeah, I mean, he himself screwed up, but but it's about more than him. And I think we still haven't, like, we had it in our notes. We were going to talk about that, like, part of the reason they implemented the um remote system, whatever, where they're going to have people watching what's going on, the what is it called, the
Virtual race
virtual.
control.
Right, VRC or whatever. Like, first of all, we never has it ever been mentioned does it even exist?
I think they've only mentioned it like when they go the virtual race controls looked at it and said blah, like because uh,
Right, yeah,
Saudi Arabia, I
yeah.
think when they did the whole rescinding the penalty against
That's right,
Alonso,
that's right. I
they
think they
said
may have mentioned it then. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
we joke that they send a sea caucus like they do the NHL replays.
Yeah, I mean, probably. And it's like, so there were all these, supposedly they were like, well, yeah, Abu Dhabi, it was, human error, quote unquote, whatever, and we've made these changes to try to make sure that things like this don't happen in the future. I don't really have much confidence that, I mean, right now we're looking at a period of however many years or who knows what, of where we're not going to necessarily have to worry about this, because Red Bull's probably going to be far ahead, and it's not going to be like somebody's,
Maybe,
maybe. I know
maybe.
you disagree slightly,
I
right?
want to believe. I think I have the same problem that Ferrari and McLaren fans have right now. Is I want to believe. So I convinced myself to believe that they are not going to be dominant. In the case of Ferrari and McLaren fans, they just want to believe that they will one day win a championship again. And and for one of those teams, I kind of actively root for that. And my wife knows which one that is because I love her very much. Um,
Aw.
well, she pulled me in. We got a lot of papaya stuff in the house.
Yeah.
Um, But you bring up an interesting point about Massey, and I think for me, there's a chronology of events that occur around Massey that uh, prove to me that he's not necessarily evil. He was more incompetent and unprepared for the level of of consistency and the level of well, not even the level, but just like the type of work he would have to do, because he was an assistant to Charlie Whiting before he died,
Right.
and so he kind of had a bit of an insider's perspective on it. But being the race director and having to render decisions like what you saw at Abu Dhabi, that's massive. But I think what really started to sour me on Massey was actually Spa, when it should have been rained out. Any race,
True,
any
true.
race
That's
that,
where it all began.
yes,
I feel like, well, that's not where it all began, but that was where, that was definitely something that people, and you know what else? Recently I heard someone talking about the fact that we don't talk enough about Spa that year, and we
right,
don't talk enough about Baku, because did
right.
they have to do, because everyone's tires were getting blown out and it was a whole situation, and
Mhm.
they didn't know whether, these tires were safe at all, and it's they didn't have to do a restart,
There were
they
I was gonna say there was a missile strike in Jeddah, and Formula One's like, "Well, we're all about safety on the track." What about the
right.
missile strike? What about
I,
that? There's a burning oil refinery in the background, and you're
uh-huh,
like, "We're
uh-huh.
here for," I mean, I
No
remember seeing,
problem, the show must go on.
exactly. So I'm thinking about it. It's like you have a track at Spa that's so wet that Nikita Mazepin got the fastest lap in that little
Oh my
processional they
god,
had.
I forgot about that, I forgot
Yeah, yeah.
about
Let the
that.
hate well up within you. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, it's okay, he's gone now, it's all fine.
But he will
Uh,
always be in the record books as the holder of the fastest lap for
oh
that
my
race,
god, that's right, that's right,
which
that's
is like,
well, surely there'll be an asterisk next to that, right? Like there should be
I
next to
don't
certain other
know.
things as well, but we've already talked about that. But about Michael Massey, I did want to mention the story that I saw that had been posted by like some. I mean, I think I saw it posted by some Formula One journalist type person. By the way, journalism, another squishy term in Formula One and in motorsport in general. Let me just say, and we will be talking about that more in the future. I have grand designs to try to I don't want to say teach you guys, because I don't want to be like an obnoxious pedant who's trying to like pretend that I'm smarter than everyone, but I do have a background in journalism and in media, and I think there's a lot of stuff that people get wrong and don't really understand about the way that whole ecosystem works around Formula One and motorsport in general. So we will talk about that in the future. But anyway, this story in the godforsaken Daily Mail, which I guess should have already been a clue as to the quality and level of reportage here, which was basically just a guy talking to Michael Massey. And so Michael Massey did have to sign, of course, an NDA, so he can't talk about specifics of things from Abu Dhabi or presumably any other things that have to do with his time as the race director. However, he is apparently free to complain about all his struggles in the wake of Abu Dhabi. And from this story, the person who wrote it is said, "quote I am happy to report that Massey, though confined by his severance deal, was willing to tell Sportsmail his own story of trial and rehabilitation, which involved receiving professional help for the mental turmoil he suffered. Now, I am a big supporter of therapy and people going to therapy when they need professional help. I commend Michael Massey, I guess, on taking that step if he felt that was what he needed. But the tone of this whole story, later on, he goes on to say he did not take up security, but now wonders if he was complacent not to have bothered, amid the booing and hissing of the online trolls and the hollering of the street critics. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a
Um,
lot. It's a lot.
I think I think I think the thing is that, again, if we go with the fact that he's not malicious, he's just incompetent. I'm a much more forgiving soul towards incompetency, right? But
Mm,
to make him the victim of this whole narrative devalues the effects of what he did. His incompetency led to really a suboptimal outcome for everyone. In fact, okay, this is insight into what my wife and I talk about as Formula One fans when we're taking road trips. We're
hmm,
literally
hmm.
driving back from visiting her family, and I'm like, okay, do you think that people would like Max Verstappen more if he had lost in 2021, but then won completely on merit in 2022 in the rocket ship
Which
of the
he
RB18.
did win unmarried in 2022.
Right. And I
Yeah.
think that to some degree his narrative would have actually progressed the normal way we see in that sport, which is, the young up and coming champion, they
Mhm.
get close and then they finally win it.
Right.
And he'd been getting just crushed prior to that, right? Like Verstappen
Mhm.
was never really a threat to Hamilton or to the Ferraris prior to that.
Yeah.
Back when Ferrari was cheating. Um, I've got strong thoughts about that.
They need
Uh,
to start cheating again, I think, you know what I'm saying?
they may be cheating, and it's like, oops, reliability. But I guess what I was getting at is that I think with Verstappen, the fact that he um, won the race under such dubious circumstances polarized fan bases in a way that if he had won the way he did in 2022, it'd have been like fair play. He won. He had the
Yeah.
bet.
Yeah.
People could argue about who's the best driver because the car is such a huge factor that we'd
Yeah.
all be able to say, well, it was the car, it was the driver, but it doesn't matter. He won and he won legitimately. But when you
Yeah.
win under circumstances like that, where it's something that is contrived, we're not talking about Timo Glock, having
No.
issues and Lewis
Yeah.
Hamilton getting a race win at Felipe Massa's
Yeah.
expense. We're talking about
Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started on like the people who are constantly like at pains to be like, how is this any different than other situations where the ref made a bad call and this such and such happened. And yeah, there have been in other sports some sort of similar situations, but like usually then what would happen in those cases is the sport would undertake like a really deep like soul searching, like how can
right.
we actually try to prevent this from happening. They would actually admit that the right thing didn't happen. We actually don't really have that in this case. Like they were
No,
like, yeah, I mean, they said it was a human error, but to this day, I don't understand why the stewards then would validate a human error. If
correct.
it was, I don't know. No one told us. Like
And
no one was like, how did the stewards look at it and go, yeah, okay, Michael, you screwed up, but by the way, that this is you did it wrong here, and we need to imagine. Of course they weren't going to reverse anything or make any changes or do the when it was weeks on or months on or as much as people hoped and wanted that to happen. But at the time, like on the day, they perhaps could have. And the stewards were like, yeah, sure, looks good to me, all right.
Yeah, I was going to say they always want to end it with a definitive answer as to who's the champion. They always want to end it with a sense of if you attended this race in person, you know that this person won the race. Um, but then I think about it and I'm like, well, yeah, but then we have people getting stripped of their records in, say, track and field for doping, right?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have,
Well, I mean, in Formula One too. I mean, we had, there was in that year. I think that was in 2021 when Sebastian Vettel was supposed to have been second in Hungary, I
mhm,
think, but he didn't. His car
right,
didn't
the
have enough
fuel.
fuel for the test, and not only did they, I mean, people made a big deal out of the fact that third place went to George Russell, then it went back to Fernando. In the case
Yeah,
of in
Saudi Arabia.
Bahrain or Saudi Arabia. That's right. I'm already getting confused. Oh no, it's only the third race of the season. It's not a good sign. Not a good sign. By the way, I relate to Lewis a lot. Like they ask questions. They'll ask Lewis about something that happened at some point, and he'll be like, "I have no idea. I have a bad memory." Like I am this way. So I'm just gonna pretend that means that I could be an 8-time world champion, but yeah, because I don't remember things either. Like it happened, and I'm like, I don't know. So, but yeah, when people made a big deal out of that, but Sebastian Vettel had a whole second place taken from him
Mhm,
like that, because of something that wasn't even his fault. And so we've had situations where race results have been changed. We've already had, even you could say with last season, where even though Max was, it was a done deal that he was going to win the championship, it was just a matter of when. People still acted like it was this like miscarriage of whatever, that when they weren't sure in Suzuka whether he was the champion or not for that brief period, and then they were like, oh yeah, and he himself was like he didn't know. And then people talked, and then that was another situation where people were like, oh, he didn't get to have the like experience of them telling him on the radio, you are the world champion, and celebrate with his team and all this. I mean, all of these things are in that same category, like the Michael Massey tears that we're supposed to cry for his mental health status. People talked about Daniel Ricciardo's mental health a lot last season, when he was struggling, and it was kind of, the writing was on the wall that he was probably not going to be kept on at McLaren. People, I consider mental health to be extremely important, and I do not want anyone to get the idea that we think that it's like a joke and it's not serious and it's not important. It's extremely important. But when we are asked over and over and over to consider the mental health of people like Michael Massey, like Daniel Ricciardo, like, whoever else, but when it comes to talking about the mental health of the only black driver in the sport and about what he must have gone through after Abu Dhabi, and to come back and to still and to continue racing and to continue working in this environment where it's very clear that many people are kind of like, why don't you just go away already? Like all the talk this season of like, is he going to retire because the car is not good? Like the every single guy who's ever, put a pinky on a Formula One car or has ever had anything to do with Formula One has an opinion and has to get asked by the press about, what do you think about Lewis? Is he going to retire? Is he going to stick it out with this bad car? This, normal car.
We're always
Um,
waiting to hear what Ralph Schumacher has to say
yeah,
because
I mean, who isn't, right? I mean, I'm waiting with bated breath always to know what his opinion is on what's going on for sure. Yeah. And it's like, again, that's the issue. Like, I don't have any problem with being sympathetic towards someone for going through something. I'm sure it was very unpleasant for Michael Massey. I'm sure it was very unpleasant for Daniel Ricciardo. I'm sure it's been unpleasant for other drivers in other kind of situations, but it is not the same. What Lewis goes through is not the same, and people don't want to admit that and don't want to agree with that because they want to pretend that race doesn't exist, just like queer people don't exist, as I was saying before. you know just like lots of things, misogyny doesn't exist either, for sure. That's not a
you
thing.
you know we're one step away from getting all the people who go like, "Well, I'm not racist. I don't hate Lewis because he's black. I just don't want all this politics and messaging in my race.
Exactly. Well, you've come to the
I
wrong
don't know
place
why he has to wear the
if you're
rainbow flag on his
I
helmet."
know. I mean, it's okay if he wants to believe that queer people should be allowed to exist, but why does he need to push that on me? I
Oh,
mean,
no.
I feel oppressed
I
by,
actually have to
and
deal with
that's,
what other people might want.
yeah, I mean, and that's the thing with like with all the discourse around like, oh, poor Michael Massey and what he's been through. Like, I, what has he been through? He lost his job, which he claims actually was very stressful and was detrimental to his life. All the traveling, all the everything, which is very hard, which a lot of people in Formula One, often talk about that being extremely hard and a difficult aspect of being in people who travel, to the races. And obviously, he had to be at every race. And you know he has another job now. White men fail upwards. I mean, that's the reality. Yes, it's not as
It's
glamorous a
it's
job as the one he had before, but
he
in
could be
this
a
very
backup
article,
quarterback in the NFL for 10 years. That's always
yes,
that's always the way I look at it. It's like, if you're a
exactly.
mediocre quarterback in the NFL
Hmm.
and you're of a certain complexion, you could always be a backup for about 10 years because,
There
hey,
you
just
go.
people just like the cut of your jib.
That's right. That's right. It's not about race. Not about race. But there's just something about you that they find more appealing.
You just
They'd
seem to
like to
have
go have
leadership
a beer with you.
qualities. It's leadership qualities. You just
Yeah.
look like the
Yeah.
type of guy who gets along with everybody.
Right, right. And the type of guy who, like, is very classy
Oh,
and,
very classy,
very
classy.
classy, comes from a good family,
Type
probably,
of person I'd like to have a beer with.
Yeah, 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 very
Could just
polite.
talk and hang out about things that we
Yeah,
have in
yeah.
common,
Exactly, exactly.
you
Like,
know?
and I couldn't do that with the black guy, not because he's black. I have many black friends.
On
Some of my
average
best,
that there was a great thing that I learned from Grace is like the source of all the knowledge in my life now. Um, but one of the things I learned was
as
that,
it should be, as
well,
it usually
I
is.
I try to give and get, but I mostly get. But one of the things I thought was interesting was there was a survey, I believe, because she is a survey methodologist. Okay, so she's like good.
Cool.
I know she doesn't talk about this that much on her podcast, but on ours, I'm gonna out her as a
Well,
survey
I
methodologist.
think we're gonna get into all that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So,
Totally.
there was an interesting, detail that came out when people talked about race, and they found that, like, if you're a white person, you often say you have like, when asked, "How many black friends do you have?" People often say, "I have 2," because
Mhm.
that's a number that seems unassailable, right? Like, "Well, I don't just
Right.
have 1, I got
Right.
2." Um, but what they found was that when you look at people's social networks, in general, black people have far more white people in their circles that they have even as
Right.
acquaintances because
Right.
we live in a culture where, as a minority, you're going to always be around the majority. But
Exactly.
if you're in the majority, you can kind of pick and choose how much you want to interact with a
Mhm.
minority.
Mhm.
And I think
Mhm.
that's one of the interesting things that shows up as that. I'm going to be generous here and say I think it shows up mostly as unconscious bias,
Yeah.
but it will manifest as actual bias in the on the larger scale. And it's,
Yeah.
don't get me started on redlining, but
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, but like the thing is that what people, and this is the last thing I'll say about this and the whole Michael Massey thing, and then we will move on to our, because we've been now going forever. I just realized.
yeah.
We'll be in the future, audience. We are going to try to keep these to an hour, but it's our first one back. We're very excited. You got to give this, you got to give us this one. Um, yeah, we're gonna move on to a cool segment next that I hope you guys will enjoy. But the last thing I want to say on this is that what I think people still fail to understand is that, like exactly what you said, unconscious bias is a thing that exists. And you can have a situation where you did not have malicious intent, but your actions nevertheless still cause an outcome that is in part caused by the fact that you, again, have bias that you're not consciously aware of. Again, the term is unconscious bias. You are not conscious of it. If you are asked directly, do you think that black people aren't as good as white people, or do you think, Lewis Hamilton has enough championships already and that's enough already, people would say, no, no, of course not, no, I don't. But it can be unconscious. And what people, again, when people talk about that, it was, probably incompetence. It wasn't that they didn't want the only black driver in the sport to have more championships than a certain lily white Michael Schumacher. No, no, that couldn't be it. Because it was the incompetence. It was they didn't, it's not like they were intending to hurt Lewis. It was that all these factors came together, and it all, it magically came down to the last race, which has happened, I think, once in history. Prior to that, it just so happened that Spa happened the way it happened, after Lewis actually talked a lot about that people should be given their money back and all this stuff. That was definitely something that happened after that race that I think some people probably couldn't have been too happy about. Him saying things like that, which they never did give those people their money back, by the way,
Oh,
FYI.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I
no, they did not. Yeah, they're, at least as far as the most recent information I had was that, yeah, they were offered, like, anyway. Well, but again, like, the things can still, in totality, without people intending, again, to be specifically biased against someone or minority group or whatever, the outcome can still be that that's what happened, and that's partially why it happened. And people don't really understand that, especially a lot of white people. And I'm not saying I'm the world's biggest expert, but I have more than two black friends. And I know I've achieved something here.
I'm
Yeah,
totally gonna edit some applause in at that moment.
yeah, yeah, give me a medal, give me a medal here. No, it's that's the sad reality. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of the numbers too, that, like, it's something like 95 or 96% of white people have no black friends, and or aren't, close with any black person that they would, like, invite to their house or something like that. I mean, it's a super high percentage, whereas, yeah, as you mentioned, for black people it's much, much lower, just by because of numbers, right?
Mhm.
So part of it is that. But yeah, I'm just glad that black people tolerate us.
I
That's all
will
I'm
say
gonna say.
something though. I do want to say something. I do think that one thing that I would temper with alongside like the aspect of race is the aspect of Lewis Hamilton is Tom Brady. Okay. And I hated Tom Brady. I'm confessing a lot of hate in my heart tonight. I hated Tom Brady because he won all the time,
Right,
and I
right.
hated Bill Belichick because he won all the time.
Sure,
This
sure.
podcast is now banned in Boston, okay?
That's fine.
Um,
I'm good with it.
so here's the thing.
No, no, Boston, we love you. You have great seafood and
Yeah,
the most Dunkin' Donuts in the world anyway.
yeah, I like Boston. I mean,
Yeah,
well, no, I don't. I hate the Celtics. But anyway,
yeah.
um, but I really went through a phase where I hated the Patriots, and one of the things I looked for was because Bill Belichick is very stoic and he never shows expressions. I enjoyed watching, like, if he got emotional during a loss, like if he got like the scowl and he was like angry.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I also enjoyed watching Tom
You
Brady
felt
get
some
sacked.
joy in your heart
Oh
then.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I want to lick the tears from their faces when they were in pain, right? I want to just drink it up, right, like a milkshake. Um, but I think to some degree, a big chunk of the hate towards Lewis is he's Tom Brady. He's that guy who just keeps winning, and he wins so easily. And I think on a long enough timeline, if Verstappen has a run like that for the next 3, 4, 5 years, people are gonna be like, "Ah, I freaking hate Verstappen," and there's gonna be like a whole.
I think that's part of it for sure. I mean, I think like that we see that in like you said other sports. For sure that's part of it.
But
Totally.
but I was gonna say
100%.
that I think that as a black person watching the hate directed at Lewis, looking at it from the cultural perspective, again, I'm part of that target demographic that he also belongs to, right? When I see people hating on Lewis, I kind of have to ask the question like, is that hate just about him being,
Mhm.
the guy who always wins, or is it more? And what I look for, and I realize we're going way over, but what I always look for is, are they attacking his personal like life? Are they attacking other things?
Mhm.
Because saying you hate, like, I don't know jack about Tom Brady. I never hated Tom Brady to the point where I was like, well, I don't like the fact that he's married to a supermodel, has 3 kids, and thinks he's better than me. Tom
Not
Brady
anymore.
Tom Brady is better than me, right? I mean, he is. I'm not. I mean,
Well,
he
at
is.
football,
Well,
let's
well,
not say
he's
that in
not a
every
better
area
podcast
perhaps.
producer,
There you go. Hey.
but no, but I mean, in almost every measurable way, Tom Brady is a more successful, more acclaimed human being than I am, and all I can hope for is to
Not
just
to me,
do.
Flip. Not to me. I
I'm
just
your
want to
I'm your
say.
producer. You
Yeah,
got
well,
if Tom Brady was
I
producing this
don't have any
podcast,
warm feelings about Tom Brady though. I think he's a MAGA person and,
he's
etc.
no Aaron Rodgers.
Well, I mean, that's no better really. No, but yeah. That's Mr. I do my own research.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say, I was hoping the Chicago Bears fan and you would just be like, "Oh, that's it, fist of rage."
Well, I
Um,
mean, but if there was a Bears player that was like that, I would say the same thing though,
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
have like for me, it's and again, listeners of the show from before will know and going forward, I'm here to tell you like I can separate the driver from the person or the team principal from the person or whatever to some degree. I can
Christian
admit that
Horner.
yeah, I mean, I can admit that Christian Horner is very talented at his job. I can admit that Max Verstappen is an amazing driver, very talented at his job. I can admit those things and still say that there are people who are very talented at their jobs and who are not pricks. So I think that I would prefer to, be fans of those people.
Fair
And
enough.
there are, that's all I'm saying. I mean, and yeah, okay.
So,
All right.
by the way, real quick, my fandom is based on how asinine the fans of the person are. So, if someone has
Right.
a toxic fan base, I automatically hate them. And for all
Well,
the
people say that about Lewis's fans, of
oh
course.
yeah,
So
and there are some Lewis fans that I look at and I'm just like, please, come on,
yeah,
you're not helping us elevate people. You got to elevate, right?
that's true.
But
That's true.
but I
I
think
mean, every fandom. I think every fandom has people, who you're like, all right, you've taken it a bit too far here.
yeah, yeah,
I'm with you, but you're freaking me out a little.
yeah,
Um,
kind of like, ooh, I gotta stop. I'm gonna unlike that because I don't want to endorse your other
Yeah,
messages.
no, exactly. But of course, every fandom has that. I will say that the times that I've had unpleasant days on social media, for example, as a female fan of content creator, etc., that sort of thing, it's usually evident by the profile pictures and the bios and all that sort of thing of what fan bases are attacking you. And I am sure there are many lovely Max Verstappen fans who are good, kind, decent people. I assume they exist. None of them are on social media though, and or at least it doesn't seem like it. Is all I'm gonna say. And I've also heard the same about a certain, Spaniards fans, the elder one. So I think that Grace, when she does come on the show eventually, will have a lot to answer for. But I'm sure she's one of those people who's better at separating the person from the driver. I can't do it as well as some other people can. That's okay. All right. Very quickly, we need to do our exciting new segment that we hope you guys are really going to love, where we are going to pick every week. We're going to talk about the best social content that we've seen online, from whether it could be from Formula One, from IndyCar, from the individual teams that make all their own stuff. It could be in the future, probably will be from some independent creators too, who of course we love to support. But as I put this together very quickly for this episode, we are going with official channels mostly for our content. And I will say that this is not a democracy, it's an autocracy. So Flip had no say in the matter. And I will just say, because when we talked about this before the show, you would have given, I think, our third place winner a higher placement, and you would have omitted, I think, our second place winner. So I will just get right to it. So with this week, we have chosen for our pole position holder for the best content, social content of the week, is the guy whose name now I forgot to put in our document and whose name escapes me, but he's I think is he even Australian? He might be British.
I thought he was Australian.
Yeah, maybe he is Australian. That would make sense why he was at the. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have seen the video of this guy. He's like, I don't know, he must be a comedian or something, or and he's in this thing called the Greeters Guild, which is probably some made up thing for comedic purposes. He's welcoming people to the paddock. So like as the drivers walk by, he says, he welcomes them and he says like these silly, ridiculous things to them. Like he says to Yuki, "You're small of stature, but your aura is magnificent," or something like that, which I loved. Punches a
I got
Yuki.
very strong Billy Crystal, you look marvelous vibes.
Yes, 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 very much, very much. Yeah. Yeah, and he did tell actually and so this is another reason where you can this is another place where you can see why some of the drivers that we love, like Alex, he told him like, "You look fabulous" or something, and Alex was like, "You look lovely too." And he was like, "Thank you." And it was this very pleasant interaction. With Lewis, it was actually hilarious. I think he had no idea who he was, and he was like, "Yeah, hi, how are you doing?" He was like he's like, "Who is this guy?" He's just it was a lot of them, you could tell, were like confused about who is this person, and they didn't necessarily have a hilarious reaction. But overall, it was so funny. I saw a lot of people online talking about they would love to see this guy like do the grid walk instead of Martin Brundle. I think we would
Ooh.
all love to see that, because imagine how that would just be hilarious. It would be awesome.
I would like to see them do it together.
That would be good too. And I do have a soft spot for Martin, I will say. And I don't actually mind his grid walk overall too much, other than when, certain things happen, like with a certain black female rapper. That was not a good situation. And Martin didn't do anything to, anyway. Um,
My
but
favorite Martin Brundle moment, real quick, when he calls Paolo Banchero from who's now playing for the Orlando Magic. He thinks he's Patrick Mahomes at
that was
Miami, and
amazing.
I'm just like,
That
oh
was
my
amazing.
gosh.
Well, I guess all black people look alike to
Or
him.
Brazilians or people of nebulous ethnic
Yeah,
origin,
yeah, yeah, possibly, possibly. But yeah, so that was hilarious. But I do overall, unless there's incidents which do sometimes happen, I enjoy his dorky bumbling kind of persona in that situation where he's trying to get people to talk to him and some of them don't want to talk to him, and he's, it's I think it's fine. But this guy I would love to see do the grid walk. I will put a link to the video for you guys in the show notes. Um, and second place, again, this is an autocracy, not a democracy. And Flip disagreed with this, but I put in second place for social content this week was Danny Rick's trip through the Australian outback, which is one of these Red Bull videos that they do for a lot of the races. Not like every race, but they Like I remember the one from Miami they did last season. It was Checo that they made do it at that point because they didn't yet have a Danny Rick to, you know, send on these errands. But if you haven't seen the video, I mean, they really are like as much hate in my heart as I have for Red Bull and for like Max and for Christian. These videos that they produce are like phenomenal. They're amazing. They really are. I mean, the production value of these videos is insane. They do the things that they do in these videos are crazy. Like this one in particular had these amazing stunts, you know, with like other Red Bull like athletes like doing like they're like jumping over an old Red Bull that Danny's driving like through the outback. There's like the scene on a bridge, and then there's like a helicopter. I mean, it's like a Hollywood movie, of a shorter length. But I mean, they're impressive. You got to admit these videos, right? I mean, they're
I'm gonna bite my tongue because I don't think we want to do a 2-hour episode.
okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. All right, we'll circle back to this another time.
Mm-hmm.
um and then third place I gave to actually a piece of IndyCar content, which I really want to highlight as much as possible because they do struggle with like they're not on the level of Formula One with making content and all the stuff that they do, and they don't have the output that Formula One does, plus all the teams that make their own stuff too, that people enjoy, and then the drivers on their own doing stuff sometimes too. People have like everyone's got like their hired photographer and videographer following them around and all this, and they make these beautiful things that IndyCar drivers, some of them have things like that, but not all. And the series itself is not as, they don't have as much money as Formula One, so they're not doing as many crazy extravagant things. Like there would never be like a video like that Red Bull video from any of the IndyCar teams. That would not happen. However, they've been trying to do a better job lately with their social content and with like social stuff in general and stuff. And they had there've been a lot of really good funny things. And one recent one was James Hinchcliffe, who is one of the commentators who also have been doing stuff for Formula One as well lately, which I really love. I really like him. I think he brings a nice Americanness to to the paddock when he's there. And he's also, I mean, he's a former racing driver, so he's very knowledgeable, and he knows what he's talking about. Unlike sometimes former drivers that we have commentating on things in Formula One, there are hits and misses there with the quality sometimes. So that he did a funny clip
No
with
judgment there.
no, none at all. Um, he did a funny clip with Alex Palau, who's one of the, young hot drivers in IndyCar. He won the championship last season, and we'll see what happens this season. They did this funny, like he was asking him questions like about he was like, why should people support you? As and Alex Palau was like, which I had no idea that Alex Palau was this funny. Like I did not realize before I had watched this. I was like, oh, he seems like a nice guy and all that, but like I didn't realize he was funny. Because yeah, when James asked him like, why should people support you, he was like, well, it's obvious, like he's like basically implying that he's very good looking, and that that's why people should support him. And I was like, all right, Alex, yeah, I dig it. That's right, that's right. Tell the people. I mean, it was very like it was a little bit like Danny Rick vibes, who like could not finish a sentence ever without mentioning how good looking he felt he was, right? But Alex, I felt it was much more charming in his case than coming from Danny, where I believe Danny says it literally every time he opens his mouth, and Alex, I'm not aware of having referred to his good looks as frequently as as Daniel Ricciardo. So I felt it was, and so it was cute, and I'm going to put a link for you guys. You can check that out. Um, and okay, finally, we have gotten to what is basically the end of the episode, and we are going to continue doing our tweet of the week. Yay! Woohoo! Yeah, I mean, people always seem to enjoy it, so we're gonna keep doing it. And it's another painful moment for Flip with this one because 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 our tweet of the week winner this week, now, as a reminder to everyone, to be eligible to win tweet of the week, you have to reply to any tweet that we post on our Twitter account. And, we like things that are funny. We may sometimes pick something that's a very insightful comment as well. It could be, but generally, I think we tend to go for the funny things. And you guys have always done a really good job with that. So keep up the good work there. And the tweet that and there's no prizes for the tweet of the week. You don't win anything except our love and respect and appreciation
And
for
they get a
engaging with
mention. They get a
us.
mention in the podcast.
That's true. That's true. You get, not only do you get to mention the podcast when we post about it, we always mention the tweet of the week winner. So it's obviously a huge honor. And you should be very grateful. And this week, the winner is Randy B066, I think is, I'm reading that correctly. And he responded to a tweet where I said that Checo was struggling mightily in free practice 3. Of course, it was more than just that, as we saw later on. His struggles continued. And he was reporting that there was something wrong with his car, he felt. And I said, who could be responsible for this? And then there was a lovely gif of Jos Verstappen, um, who perhaps, maybe snuck in the back of the garage and was like, "Whoop, let me just solve this problem here of, my son possibly having to deal with this man, you know, going as fast as him. I'll just take care of that." And Randy responded with a gif of his own, which was of Daniel Ricciardo, because of course that is something that I've also seen people be like, yeah, maybe Daniel's like, I would like to drive the car, and if we can make Checo look bad, perhaps it could be me. And so he replied with a cute gif of Danny, and for that you are the winner of tweet of the week this week, Randy. So congratulations. Yay. Well done. Well done. And yeah, I think that is it from us, as we've gone on now for forever and did not
Whew.
necessarily mean to.
I think this
Yeah.
was longer than the Australian Grand Prix.
No, because that was like 3 hours.
We had 0 red flags, though.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. I mean, some people might disagree. They might think that some of the opinions were of the red flag variety. I think that's wrong, but it's to each his own. If you think that we were extremely wrong about anything or extremely right, in either case, you can get in touch with us, whether it's on our socials, or you can also email us as well. The email address is racingincidentpod, P-O-D, at gmail.com. So racingincidentpod at gmail.com. Send us an email if you want to tell us how awesome we are, or I guess even if we suck, I will probably just ignore that one though. So, fair warning. Again, Flip, welcome to the Racing Incident family. We're
Woo.
super psyched to have you with us. We're so excited. Hopefully, this is going to be the beginning of something great and amazing for all of us. And hopefully, this is just the start of all of our adventures. It's the beginning of a beautiful friendship, you might say. And now I can add you to my list of black friends.
You're up to 3 or 4 or 5.
Woo! No, I don't know. I'd have to sit there and count. I mean,
On the
I'm
next
not
episode,
sure.
we'll find out how many there actually are.
Yeah. We'll do a tally. So yeah, so now I can add you. I'm very excited. Now if I get asked that survey question, I will come up sounding so cool. And I'm very happy about that. So, all right. Until next time. Bye.